Hello everybody, I am Deepika from Learno Hub, a free learning platform where you can study physics, chemistry, maths, biology absolutely for free only at learnohub.com. So students, today we are going to start with the next chapter, so that is the endocrine system. So this is the chapter where we will be talking about the endocrine glands, and we will be talking about their secretions and the role of those secretions in our body, right? So let's start with our chapter. So the endocrine glands, and why do we need these endocrine glands? So endocrine glands are the glands which secrete certain chemicals, and these chemicals are called as hormones, right? So these hormones, these chemicals which are secreted by the endocrine glands, they regulate our body. So whatever happens in our body, so there are hormones which regulate our body activities. So say if your sugar level, so the blood sugar level increases, so that is also regulated by your hormones, or you can say the endocrine system which is present inside your body. So these activities, the activities which are regulated by the hormones, they are secreted. These hormones are secreted at a proper time, and they are secreted in the correct sequence, right? So say if there is some say blood sugar level we are talking about, if our body has to regulate this blood sugar level, so say first we need hormone A, so then only hormone A will be secreted first, and after that it will lead to the secretion of hormone B, and then it will lead to the secretion of hormone C. So this is just an example to tell you that these hormones, they are secreted at the right time, in the right amount, and in a proper sequence. Okay, so hormones, what are these hormones? So these hormones are the secretions of specific cells or specific glands in the body, and they are carried to all the parts. So these hormones, they are carried to all the parts through blood, and it affects one or more body parts, right? So these hormones are the secretions which are secreted by the specific cells. So say if there is a hormone, say insulin, so it is, so only a specific organ or a specific cell is going to secrete that hormone. So no other hormone or no other gland or no other cells can do that function, right? So these are secreted, these hormones are secreted by endocrine glands, and these endocrine glands are also called as ductless glands. So ducts are basically, you can say, the tubes, right? So these glands, they do not have any tube, so they just produce their secretions. These chemicals or these hormones are produced, and these hormones, they are directly secreted into the blood. So there are no tubes, there is no special system which carries these hormones, only they are secreted into the blood, and through blood they are carried to their target organs, right? So endocrine glands are also called as ductless glands. So there are another type of hormones which we are not going to study in this chapter, but just to tell you, the other type of glands are called as exocrine glands. So these glands are duct glands. So these have special ducts, and through these special ducts they secrete their chemicals into the specific target organ, which means they do not use blood, right? So they do not use blood to carry their secretions to the target organs. So they have their own ducts, or they have their own tubes to perform those functions. So now we have already discussed about neural control, right? So nervous system we have already spoken about, and in this we are talking about the hormonal control. So let us try to differentiate between the two, because this nervous system, it also controls a lot of activities in our body, and in the same way these hormones also do the same, right? So let's talk about them. What is the difference between the hormonal control and the nervous control? So if you talk about hormonal control, it is a relatively slow process, right? So this whole process is usually slow. So hormones will be secreted, they will be carried through blood to the target organ, and then that target organ will start performing its functions, right? And if we talk about nervous control, so it is intermediate, or you can say it can be very rapid, right? So the response is usually fast in case of nervous control as compared to the hormonal control. The second one is it is transmitted chemically through blood. So chemically these hormones are carried through blood, but in case of nervous control, these are transmitted electrochemically through nerve fibers and chemically across the synapse. So as I told you in the nervous system chapter also, that when an impulse is present in the neuron, right, the basic structural and functional unit of nervous system, right, the brain, so that impulse will be in the electrical form, but as soon as this impulse has to be transferred to the next neuron, so there is a small gap between these two neurons which is called as synapse. So in this space, in this minute space, this impulse is carried in the form of chemical signals, right? So the transmission is electrochemical. Fine. So I hope this is clear. The next is hormonal control affects different organs. So there will be an organ which will secrete a chemical, right, and its effect is on the different organs of our body. And talking about nervous control, so it affects only particular muscles or glands. So if I touch something very hot, so in that case my sensory neurons will send signal to my brain, right, and in turn my central nervous system will send the signal to the effector muscles to remove the hand. So it won't happen that I am touching something hot and my central nervous system is telling my limb muscles to just run away, right? So that will not happen. I'll just remove my hand. So this is the difference between hormonal and neural control, nervous control. So the next is hormonal control. The effect is short term, or it can also be a long lasting one. In case of nervous control, this effect is very short lived, right? So we studied about the neurotransmitters. These are the chemicals which are present, which actually transmit signal in a chemical form from one neuron to the next, right? So these neurotransmitters have to be broken down as soon as the impulse goes from one neuron to the next, right? So this effect is very short lived. Talking about the hormonal control, so it can affect growth, and it in case of neural control, it does not affect growth, because there are certain hormones that are present inside our body and they help our body to grow, right? So they are directly involved in the growth, right? So talking about the physical growth, like growing in height, or talking about the sexual maturity, so there are hormones which control all these things. But in case of nervous control, they cannot affect our growth. Okay, so I hope this is clear. So the next difference is hormonal control can bring about specific chemical changes and regulate mechanism. So these hormonal controls, they can bring about specific chemical changes. So specific chemical changes are brought in our body, and hence they regulate our metabolism too. Then coming on to the nervous control, so they do not influence any chemical change and they cannot regulate metabolism. Hormonal control, so it cannot be modified by learning from previous experience. So this hormonal control has nothing to do with the previous past experiences, right? But in case of nervous system, so it can be modified to some extent by the learning experiences. So you remember that Pavlov's experiment on the dog, so that was an experience for the dog. So whenever the bell will ring, the food will be followed, right? right? But that is not true in case of hormonal control. So I hope the differences between the hormonal control and nervous control are clear. Talking about the general properties of hormones, the first is secreted from their source directly into the blood. So this is the first thing that we spoke about endocrine glands, that they do not have any ducts, they are ductless glands, and these secretions, these chemicals are poured into the blood. The second is they regulate physiological processes by means of chemicals. So there are the physiological processes which are happening inside our body, and these are regulated by the chemical means. The next is they act on the target organ or the cells which are usually away from the source. So say there is an organ A which is producing a hormone, and it is going to affect the organ which is very much away from this organ, and so say that organ is B, right? The next is they are produced in very small quantities, and even those small quantities, it is biologically very active. Then there are some hormones which are peptides, right? Some are amines. For example, adrenaline, right? So the adrenaline is a hormone which is basically amide. So there is hormone called insulin which is a protein, right? Not E, right? And both these are what? These are water soluble. Then some of the hormones are steroids, right? And these are lipid soluble. Okay, so the next is the excess. If there is excess of these hormones in our body, or if there is deficiency of hormones in our body, so all of them leads to serious consequences. So the excess of anything or deficiency, so it is said that whatever you eat, you should eat in a proper amount so that your body gets enough nutrition, right? So you should not overeat something, but you should not even go for things, say let's not eat it, I have already eaten it 1 month back, right? So no, your body needs food in an appropriate amount so that all the nutrients can come into your body, right? Or your body should get all the essential nutrients. In the same way, when we talk about hormones, so hormones, they are produced in excess or there is deficiency which leads to the serious consequences. The next is they are not stored in the body and they are excreted out from the system. So sometimes it happens we go out and instead of say 2 chocolates, you bring 4 chocolates, right? And then you say, okay, today I just want to eat 2, so let's store 2, I'll eat some other day. So that does not happen with the hormones in our body. So these are not stored in the body, and if these are excess, these are present in excess amount in our body, so they are excreted out from our system. So I hope the general properties are clear. Now let us focus on the endocrine glands. So you can see there are many glands that are mentioned in this picture, but out of them we will be studying only a few of them, only 4 of them which are in your syllabus. So let's see what all are written. So the first one is hypothalamus, the other one is pituitaries, right? So pituitary gland is very important gland and it is also called as master gland, right? So the next one is thyroid gland, so it is also very important gland in our body. The next one is stomach mucosa, because this also secretes has some secretions which come directly into the stomach. The next one is adrenal hormone which are present above the kidney. So these are the kidneys. Above the kidneys there are these small structures which are called as adrenal glands, right? Pancreas, right? So pancreas, if you see the structure, so somewhere near the stomach you will see pancreas. Then from here the small intestine mucosa, because small intestine also secretes some of the glands. The next one is ovaries. So ovaries, only in females there are ovaries which secrete certain hormones which are needed by a female, right? Then testes, which are present in males, and these also secrete hormone testosterone which is just needed by the males. Okay, and it is very important for you to understand their location, right? So we will be talking about adrenal glands which are present above the kidneys, then these pancreas which are present near the stomach, right? Then the next one is thyroid gland which is present over here in the neck region. The next one is pituitary gland which is present in our brain, right? Somewhere over here. in the upper portion, right? So now we will talk about these 4 hormones in detail. What are their secretions and what are their functions? What if there is excess of this hormone? What if there is deficiency of the hormone? So let's talk about them. So let us first talk about the first first endocrine gland, that is adrenal gland. So as the word suggests, ad means near, right? And renal, so I told you about this word in the chapter the excretory system. So renal stands for kidney, right? So these are the glands which are near our kidneys. So this is a kidney, so above the kidney there is a hill-like structure, right? And that is called as adrenal gland. Okay, so this is the adrenal gland. So if you talk about the adrenal gland, right, so adrenal gland consists of 2 parts. So there are 2 regions. So one is, the inner one is called as medulla, and the outer one is called as cortex. So medulla is so you can also say adrenal medulla, which secretes adrenaline gland, whereas this cortex region, right, the adrenal cortex, it will secrete corticoids, right? So let us first talk about adrenal medulla. So adrenal medulla secretes adrenaline hormone. So just listen to the other names also, just remember the other names of this hormone, because the question can come in any way, right? So adrenaline hormone, or the epinephrine, or noradrenaline hormone. So these are the different names of the hormone adrenaline, which is secreted by adrenal medulla, the inner part of this adrenal gland, right? So it is a hormone which is also called as emergency hormone. What do we call it? So we call it as emergency hormone, right? Why? Because it is mostly secreted in our body when we are going through any emotional stress or something, right? So it prepares our body to meet those emergency situations for fight or for flight, right? So either you fight or you run away. Okay, so this is the when this is the situation, right? So in that situation, so just think of a situation like this, right? Or think of a situation when you have that emotional stress, right? So which hormone is acting in your body? So which gland is very much functional in your body? So that is the adrenal gland, which secretes adrenaline, right? So if you are full of emotional stress, so at that particular time adrenaline will be secreted more. So this hormone will actually help you to face that situation. Okay, so in this case you just recall the nervous system also. So that autonomic nervous system is very much in effect, right? So this autonomous nervous system is regulated by whom? This small part of our adrenal gland, that is adrenal medulla, because it secretes adrenaline hormone, right? So let us look into the details of the functions or the role of this hormone in our body. Now the responses of this adrenal hormone on our different body parts. So the first body part is heart. So whenever the adrenaline hormone increases or is secreted by adrenal glands, so our heart actually beats faster, right? So think about an emergency situation. So you saw a snake, right? So what will you do? So I always take an example of a dog whenever I teach nervous system. So this time I thought, let us take another example. So let us talk about snake, right? So I am really scared of dogs as well as of snakes. So as soon as you see a snake, so what will happen? Your heart will start beating very fast. Why? Because adrenal hormone gets into your blood, okay, and your blood pressure also increases. So many of the time you must have seen any elder person in your family who gets angry, and many of the people saying the thing, right? So don't don't stress yourself, your blood pressure will increase, right? So it is that emergency situation for that person of your family, and in that emergency situation the adrenal gland will secrete adrenaline hormone. The next one is biological advantage. So it sends more glucose and oxygen to the muscles. Now this is the situation when our body needs energy, right? So more glucose and oxygen is sent to the muscles. So I saw a snake and I am very scared of it. So what will I do? I will just run away from that situation. So my muscles, my limb muscles, they need more energy, right? Next is effect or sensation. So what will be the effect? So you'll feel that heart beating, that thumping of the heart, right? If you keep your hand like this, even if you don't keep it, you will actually feel your heart, right? So as of now, when you are just listening to me, so do you actually feel your heart thumping? No, you will not, right? But in emergency situation, it will happen in your body. The next one is the breathing center. So breathing center, so what is the effect of adrenaline? So the faster and deeper breathing. So of course you will run, you will be scared. So what you will do? Right? So you will breathe faster and you will breathe deeper, right? Now what will be the biological advantage? So there will be increased oxygenation of the blood and there will be rapid removal of carbon dioxide. So oxygenation will be increased, right? The oxygen in the blood will be increased and there will be rapid removal of oxygen, because our cells need to produce more and more energy, right? So more and more oxygen will be given to our body and more carbon dioxide will be eliminated from our body. So what will be the effect or the sensation? So we'll feel panting, right? So I hope these simple responses to these organs are clear to you. So let's see the next one. So the next is arterioles of the skin. So what will happen to the arterioles of the skin? So they will constrict. So so what will be the biological advantage? So what if these arterioles of the skin, they constrict? So there will be less blood going to the skin, means more energy or the more oxygen will be available to the muscles, because in that situation when I saw a snake, I need to run away, right? So in that situation my skin does not need that much of oxygen, but my muscles do need it. The next is, what is the effect? So the person turns pale, right? So you must have heard about that phrase ki shakal ka rang ud gaya. So this is the same situation. The next is arterioles of the digestive system. So do you think at that situation when there is a snake in front of you, so do you think your digestive system needs more oxygen, or the arterioles of that system needs more oxygen? So no. So in that case also, the digestive system, the arterioles of this digestive system, they constrict and there will be less blood that will go into the digestive system and more will be given to the muscles. And what will happen? Due to which you will feel the dry mouth. You must have heard again the same situation, शक्ल का रंग उड़ गया और मुंह सूखने लग गया, right? I was so scared, right? So you must have heard about those situations, right? So this is the situation that happens over here too. The next one is the muscles of the body. So what will happen to the muscles of your body? So they will be tensed, right? So the tensed muscles will be there, and what will be the biological advantage? So they will be ready for the immediate action, right? So do you ever I have been to that situation when there is a snake in front of me. So in that particular situation, do you just actually stand there and think, wow, what a beautiful skin this snake has? No, you will never ever do that. So what will be the biological advantage of your muscles getting tensed? So you will be ready for the action in that particular situation, and that effect is tense feeling. So you will be very tensed, and you will even start shivering of the fear. You will start shivering, right? The next is liver. So talking about liver, so there will be conversion of glycogen to glucose. So what will happen when the glycogen will be converted to oxygen? So there will be more energy that will be produced in the body. So the glucose available in the blood for energy production, so more and more glucose will be there in the blood, and more oxygen will be produced. So what will be the effects? So there will be no sensation. You will actually feel numb. Okay, the next is fat deposit. So in case of fat deposit, the fat will also be converted into the fatty acids, and fatty acid will be available in the blood for muscle contraction, and again there will be no sensation, right? So I hope all the responses, or the biological advantages, the effects, everything is clear to you. So let us now talk about the other functions of adrenaline, right? So what are the other functions of adrenaline? So they increase the clotting capacity of blood. So in case you get hurt, right, so the clotting capacity will be increased by this hormone. The next is it dilates the pupil of the eye. The third one is it stimulates the uterine contraction during labor, because that is also an emergency situation, right? So in that situation also hormone adrenaline comes into the picture, right? So it also stimulates the muscles of the hair follicles. So now if you just think about all of them and just go back to the nervous system, so there was sympathetic nervous system, right? So all the functions you have already studied in that part also. Okay, next is the functions of adrenaline, the emergency hormone. So what are the different functions of adrenaline? So the first is it increases heartbeat. So heartbeat increases by increasing blood pressure, right? So blood pressure will increase, heartbeat will increase, then there will be more blood that will be supplied to the muscles than to the skin or the other organs, okay, because your muscles might need more energy. Then the more glucose is released into the blood, so more action is there where in the liver, where glycogen is converted to glucose, so that more and more energy should be provided to the blood, so that more and more glucose is given to the blood, so that more energy can be extracted. Now talking about the next thing, that is adrenal cortex. So adrenal cortex secretes many hormones, but it is best known for a hormone called cortisone. So this hormone basically suppresses the inflammation. So cortical hormones, what are the different types of cortical hormones? The first one is mineralocorticoid, then glucocorticoids and sex corticoids, right? So mineralocorticoids, so they regulate the mineral metabolism like sodium ion metabolism in our body. Then talking about the glucocorticoids, so they regulate the carbohydrate, protein and fat metabolism in our body. So sex corticoids, they behave as sex hormones in males and females as well, and in those young children who have this cortex portion little bulged out, so there is premature sexual maturity, right? So the sexual maturity comes little early in those children. So the general functions of cortical hormones, like they increase the blood glucose concentration, they influence the fat and protein metabolism in the body, then they regulate salt and water balance in the body, and finally they adapt the body to the stresses such as extreme heat, cold, burns or infections. So in those extreme cases or in these stress related cases, these cortical hormones come into the picture. Hyposecretions of cortical hormones, a situation where more cortical hormones less cortical hormones are secreted, where the cortical hormones are less in the body. So in that case, there is a disease which with which an individual gets affected. So that disease is Addison's disease. So what are the basic symptoms of this disease? So there is loss of energy, there is skin pigmentation, there is weight loss, nausea, there is hypoglycemia, that is the blood sugar level is very low. So when the blood sugar level is low, so it means the energy will also be very low. Okay, then they will be more sensitive to cold and pain. So we just discussed about the functions, the general functions of the cortical hormones. So these are the hormones which come into the picture when there is there are stresses, right, when there is extreme cold or extreme hot. So these individuals will be more sensitive to cold and pain. There will be increased susceptibility to infection, so that person will be more vulnerable to the infections. Now the next is hypersecretions of cortical hormones. So when we talk about the hypersecretions, so it leads to a syndrome called Cushing's syndrome. So in this syndrome, either you will see when when there is a lot of cortical hormone, so in that case there will be no feeling of low energy, right? So there will be obesity, there will be high blood sugar, then there will be osteoporosis, so a disease which is related to the bones, right? Then there will be weakness. So more blood sugar level doesn't mean that you will be you have a lot of energy, now you can do anything through a 24/7, right? Then there will be salt retention in the body and there will be water retention in the body. So both of them are very dangerous symptoms in the body, like they are the very dangerous things that happen in a body. The next endocrine gland is pancreas. So pancreas is both duct gland and ductless gland, so which means both exocrine gland, right, and endocrine gland. Okay, so in case of exocrine gland, so which means it has ducts, so it has ducts through which it pours its secretion into the duodenum for digestion. So what is this secretion? So this is pancreatic juice. Okay, the next is ductless glands. So these are the glands which have special group of hormone secreting cells called islets of Langerhans. Okay, so these cells, these special cells, hormone secreting cells, secrete three hormones: the insulin, glucagon and somatostatin. So insulin is secreted by beta cells, glucagon is secreted by alpha cells, and somatostatin is secreted by delta cells, right? So we will not talk about somatostatin because this is not in our syllabus. We will just focus on insulin and glucagon. So the first hormone secreted by endocrine portion of pancreas is insulin. So insulin is secreted by beta cells. So this is something important that you should remember. So it checks the rise of sugar levels in our body. So how it functions? So it promotes the glucose utilization by the body cells. So body cells will utilize more and more glucose, so more and more energy will be produced, and the blood sugar level will be in control, right? So blood sugar level will be in control. The next is it stimulates deposition of extra glucose of blood as glycogen in liver and muscles. So it allows more and more glucose. So whatever is the extra glucose that is present in the blood is stored as glycogen in liver and muscles, and when it is needed, like in stress conditions where adrenaline hormone is secreted, so in those conditions this glycogen gets converted into glucose and energy is derived from this glycogen, right? So I hope the how insulin actually checks the rise of blood sugar level is clear to you. The under-secretion of insulin. So if we talk about insulin, so there is under-secretion. So there is insufficient amount of insulin that is produced by the beta cells of our pancreas, right? So in this case, there is a situation called as diabetes. So this is diabetes mellitus, which is hyperglycemia. Hyper means excess, glycemia, right? So it is excess sugar in blood, right? So this means excess sugar in blood. So in a diabetic person, what happens, there is high concentration of sugar in blood, so blood has a lot of sugar, and that much sugar is not very healthy for our body. Then it excretes great deal of sugar, great deal of urine with sugar. So when the urine is passed out, when the urine is made by the kidneys, or urine is passed out of our body, so if we test that urine, so that person's urine will contain a lot of sugar. So that is why urine test is also done in case of a diabetic patient. The next is the person feels thirsty. So when there is more and more of glucose that needs to be thrown out of the body, in that case more and more urine needs to be produced. When more urine will be produced, a person will have less water in the body, and when there is less water, the person will feel thirsty. The next is there is loss of weight, right? So that person loses weight, and the person, when there will be when that person is losing weight, that person is getting weaker and weaker, and in many cases there is loss of eyesight too. So there is loss of eyesight. Now a very important thing that is being done in some patients, where when they are diabetic, when there is hyperglycemia, so in that case insulin hormone is directly given to that person through injections, but that is only a treatment, right? So because that person's body is not producing insulin, so it is just a treatment, so just provide insulin to that person, but it is not at all a cure. It is not at all a cure, right? So when you put insulin injections to that person, so that doesn't mean that his pancreas, the beta cells, will start producing insulin hormone. Okay, so that is just a treatment. Now when we talked about the under secretion, so it is very important to talk about the over secretion also, right? So because when we started this chapter, we said the excess or the deficiency of hormone is very harmful to the body. So these hormones should be produced at a right time and in a right amount, and should be produced in a right sequence. Okay, so when there is over secretion, so which means the sugar level in the blood will get lowered. Why? Because there will be lot of insulin, and this insulin will metabolize all the sugar that is present in the body, so the sugar levels will go down. So in case if a person's brain does not get enough glucose, so that person might go into a state of coma, and and this level can be so dangerous even for a few minutes. So say for a few minutes a person's brain did not get glucose, so that might be dangerous for that person, and this is called as insulin shock or hypoglycemia, when there is very less sugar in the blood, right? So it is also called as insulin shock. Okay, so I hope both the under secretion and the over secretion are clear to you. Now the glucagon. So glucagon, as the insulin was secreted by the beta cells, glucagon is a secretion of pancreas which is secreted by alpha cells. So it stimulates the breakdown of glycogen in liver to form glucose. Okay, so this is the function of glucagon in our body. So let us now talk about the hormones of islets of Langerhans. So these are the hormones which are produced by the pancreas, the special secreting cells of pancreas, that is the islets of Langerhans. So the first is insulin, which is produced from the beta cells. So this insulin, it promotes the glucose uptake by the body cells, and it stimulates the deposition of extra glucose in liver and the muscles, right? Now what if there is a deficiency of this hormone called insulin? So in that case the person will get diabetic. So there will be diabetes mellitus, that is hyperglycemia. So there will be lot of blood sugar which will lead to diseases in the person. Now what if there is excess of this hormone insulin? So in that case it might cause nerve cell starvation. So what did we talk about a few slides back, that if a person's brain does not get glucose in enough amount, even for a few seconds, that person might go into the coma. So that glucose is so much needed by our body, right, by our brain as well, and the brain goes into coma. Right. Now the second hormone that we studied was glucagon, which is secreted by the alpha cells. It stimulates the liver to convert the glycogen into glucose. So whenever the glycogen is needed, whenever the glucose is needed, so this extra glucose that was converted into glycogen, then again it breaks down, and from glycogen glucose is formed. Now the roles of the pancreatic hormones. So the major two hormones from pancreas are insulin and glucagon. So we will just talk about them in this flow chart. So insulin. So whenever there is high blood sugar in our body, so as soon as we eat food, so after some time our food gets digested. Now at this particular time, after digestion, lot of glucose enters into our blood sugar, right, into our blood. So it promotes the insulin release. So this high blood sugar will send a signal to the pancreas, then the beta cells of the pancreas will start producing this insulin, and when this insulin is produced in the body, it will go to the tissue cells, and in the tissue cells it will lower the blood sugar. Okay, and it also whenever there is excess of sugar in our body, which is not metabolized by our body, so that particular blood sugar is converted from glucose into glycogen, right? So then it is stored in liver in form of glycogen. So this process takes place in our liver. Okay, now when there is low blood sugar, when the sugar level falls down, in that case glucagon is released. So what will happen, this low blood sugar level in our body will send a signal to pancreas, and pancreas alpha cells will release a hormone called glucagon, which stimulates the glycogen breakdown in liver. So what will happen, glycogen will get converted into the glucose, and now this glucose can be utilized by the body, right? So this is the complete role of the pancreatic hormones. So we spoke about the theoretical part also. Now we just took a look in a form of a flow chart. So this is very important for you to understand the flow chart, because from flow chart many of the things that you might have not understood in the rest of the part. So this flow chart makes you understand all those things, right? So I hope this is clear. So let's now talk about our next endocrine gland, that is thyroid gland. So it is situated over here, right? So it is a bilobed, so there are two lobes in the gland, and it is something like this butterfly shaped gland, right? So this is the one wing, first wing, and this is the second wing of the butterfly. So these are the thyroid glands, which are situated in front of the neck, just below the larynx. So there is larynx, below the larynx is the thyroid gland. Okay, so larynx is what? It is the sound box, okay, so which produces sound in our body. So the two lobes, they are joined by narrow isthmus. So there is a narrow isthmus which basically joins these two nodes. So this is the esophagus, and these glands are the thyroid glands, and over here these round structures are called as parathyroid glands. So this is the larynx. If you see the front view, so this is the larynx, and below larynx is the thyroid gland, right? And if we see the back view, from back view we will first see esophagus, and then in the sides we will see what? We will get to see these wings of the butterfly called as thyroid glands. So they secrete two hormones. So the first one is thyroxine, and the another one is calcitonin. So in this particular session we will only talk about, in this particular class we will only talk about thyroxine. So thyroxine, it regulates basal metabolism. So there is basal metabolism, which is regulated by the thyroxine. So the increased secretion of thyroxine increases the metabolism. So whenever the secretion of this hormone thyroxine is like whenever thyroid gland produces more thyroxine, so it increases the metabolism of the body, and if there is decrease in secretion, so it decreases the metabolism. So it also affects the general growth of the body, ossification of the bones, and temperature, body temperature, and mental development of the brain. So you must have heard about that many of the pregnant ladies, they have the deficiency of this hormone called thyroid hormone, right? So basically the thyroxine. Okay, so in that particular case, there are the chances that there will be retardation, the mental retardation of the baby, or there will be less growth in the body, or the ossification of bones. Basically the bone formation, the bone development is also reduced. So the thyroxine hormone is very much important for our body, so that all the function of metabolism is done right, then the general body growth is fine, then the bone formation is okay, and also body temperature and mental development also takes place at a fine level. So again, in this condition also, it is very important to understand what will happen if there is under secretion of a hormone and if there is over secretion of a hormone. So what will happen if there is less secretion of hormone thyroxine? So that leads to a condition called hypothyroidism. So what will happen? So there is simple goiter, there is cretinism, and myxedema, right? So these are the three conditions that arises. First is simple goiter, where there is enlargement of the thyroid gland and there is swelling in the neck. So this, because the thyroid gland is present in the neck region, so this region is there is swelling in this region, right, in the neck region. Then there is insufficient quantity of iodine in food. So this is the situation which arises when you take less or insufficient amounts of iodine in your food. So iodine, from where do you get it? You get it from the salts, right? So it is very important to have the iodized salt in your food, so that your body can produce enough hormone called thyroxine, and that thyroxine can actually help your body to grow. The next is cretinism, which affects the growth of children showing dwarfism and mental retardation. So it basically affects the growth of children, and in those children who actually have very short stature, who are not tall enough, or they have the mental retardation, their mentally they are not fully developed, right, or they have certain issues. So in those cases, that leads to a situation called cretinism. Then due to the defective development or early atrophy of the thyroid gland. So this happens if there is a defect in the development of the thyroid gland, or if there is any injury to the thyroid gland. The next is myxedema. So it affects an adult if his thyroid does not function properly. So if the thyroid gland does not function properly, it leads to myxedema, where person becomes sluggish. So that person is very weak, and there is swelling in the hands and the face, and it leads to a situation called myxoedema. Okay, so I hope the differences between the three are very much clear to you. So what will happen if there is under secretion of the thyroxine? So that will lead to simple goiter or cretinism or myxoedema, right? So these are the three conditions which arises. Now the next is over-secretion of thyroxine. So whenever there is over-secretion, it is called as hyperthyroidism, and it leads to a form of goiter which is called as exophthalmic goiter, right? So what are the symptoms? How will you figure out this situation? So there is increase in metabolic rate. So there is marked increase in the metabolic rate. There is rapid heart rate. There is shortness of breath. The eyes become protruded, as you see in this picture. So they actually bulge out, right? And there it actually forms goiter in the neck. So that goiter, the simple goiter, is formed due to the this goiter, the exophthalmic goiter is formed due to the over secretion of the thyroxine hormone by the thyroid gland. Now talking about the next endocrine gland, so that is the pituitary gland. So as you see, pituitary gland, it is basically a small projection that is about a pea, it is just a pea-sized gland which hangs from the base of the midbrain below the hypothalamus. So this is hypothalamus, and below hypothalamus is this pea-sized organ which is called as pituitary. So pituitary is also called as the master gland because this is the gland which actually controls all the other glands of the body. So this is called as the master gland. Now since this is the this gland is a pea-sized gland, but it is divided into two parts. So the one is anterior pituitary lobe and the second one is posterior pituitary lobe, and in some of the cases there is this there is the front end of the posterior pituitary has certain different structure which is called as intermediate lobe, and this intermediate lobe is absent in humans but it is present in many lower animals. So if we talk about the weight, its weight is only about half gram. So see how less is 1 gram, and even it is half of a gram, it is just 1/2 grams. So this is the weight of this endocrine gland called pituitary gland. Now the hormones from the anterior pituitary, because we spoke about the two regions of the pituitary gland. So this is the anterior pituitary region and this is the posterior pituitary region, right? So let us talk about the hormones which is secreted by the anterior pituitary. So there are 4. So the first is growth hormone, right? So it is very important. The second one is thyroid stimulating hormone. So it is related to the thyroid gland, right? So we'll study about the functions also. So it is called as TSH. The next is gonad stimulating hormone or gonadotrophin hormone. The next one is adrenocorticotropic hormone, that is ACTH. So first, second, third and fourth. So these are the 4 different hormones secreted by the anterior pituitary gland. Growth hormone. So the first hormone that is secreted by anterior pituitary gland is anterior pituitary lobe is growth hormone, which is also called as somatotrophin. So somato, it stands for body, and trophin, the trophic word, stands for stimulating. Okay, so now what happens? So there are 3 situations that can arise. So first is the deficiency results in dwarfism. So if there is deficiency of this growth hormone, so growth hormone is related to the growth of the body. So just think about the growth in terms of size. So in terms of size, if we think, so if the growth hormone is produced less in our body, so that will lead to dwarfism. When there is under secretion of growth hormone, a person will remain a dwarf. Okay, the next is over secretion in childhood results in gigantism, right? So it is a situation where there is over secretion of hormone, and in this case the legs and the limbs, they will grow very long, and even the height of this person is going to be around 2.7 meters, right? So that is too much. The next is acromegaly. So acromegaly is a situation where there is over secretion of growth hormones suddenly occurs in an adult, right? So this is the situation. Gigantism is a situation when we are talking about over secretion of a hormone, of growth hormone in childhood, but this is a situation, acromegaly is a situation that happens in adults, and there is sudden increase, sudden over secretion of hormone of growth hormone in certain individuals where there is excessive growth of bones in face, hands and feet, and even the lips gets enlarged too much, right? So this is a situation, these are the 3 different situations that happens due to deficiency or over secretion of growth hormones. Now the hormones, rest of the hormones from anterior pituitary. So the first one was growth hormone. The second is thyroid stimulating hormone, which we call as TSH. So this hormone activates the thyroid to secrete thyroxine. So basically it goes and acts on thyroid gland, right? So that is why we call it as a master gland, because this is the gland which controls the other organs' secretions. So it will ask thyroid gland to secrete thyroxine. Then gonad stimulating hormone or gonadotrophin hormone. So it will regulate the activity of our gonads. What are the gonads? So in males they are testes and in females they are ovaries. The next is adrenocorticotropic hormone, that is ACTH. ACTH is a hormone which actually regulates the activity of adrenal cortex. So I am just talking about the cortex. So if this is the adrenal gland, right? So inner one is what? Inner one is medulla. So it regulates the activity of the outer region of this adrenal gland called adrenal cortex. Okay, so that is why this particular hormone is called as master gland, because it regulates other glands too, their secretions too, right? So that is why it is called as a master gland. Now the next portion of pituitary is the posterior pituitary. So let us talk about the hormones which are secreted by this posterior pituitary. So the first one is antidiuretic hormone, which is also called as in short ADH or vasopressin. So this is the hormone. What is the effect of this hormone on the body? So it constricts the blood vessels. So when blood vessels are constricted, it rises the blood pressure. It rises the pressure of the blood in these vessels, and it acts on the kidneys, and kidneys in this case will reabsorb water, right? So there will be reabsorption of water in the kidney tubules, right? So in kidney tubules, so just recall the excretory system. So water is reabsorbed in the kidney tubules. So this is done under the effect of hormone called vasopressin or the ADH. Now what if this hormone is, our body is deficient of this hormone? So this leads to diabetes insipidus. So this is also called as water diabetes, right? So water diabetes is the case where a lot of water is basically lost from the body. So frequent urination is seen in that person, and since a lot of water is lost and less water is reabsorbed by the kidney tubules, so that person feels thirsty. Okay, the next hormone which is secreted by the posterior pituitary is a hormone called oxytocin, and this hormone is very much needed at the time of delivery. So it is the hormone which stimulates the contraction of uterus in pregnant mother. So in pregnant mother at around 9 months, this hormone is released, which leads to the contraction of the uterus. When uterus will contract, it will lead to expulsion of the baby, or it will lead to the delivery of the baby, right? And when the baby is delivered, after that this hormone leads to the stimulation of milk ejection. Now there is a newborn baby and there is a new mother. So this newborn baby needs milk. So this is stimulated, this milk ejection is stimulated by hormone oxytocin, which is released by the posterior pituitary. So let us take a glance at the hormones which are secreted by pituitary and their action. So first is anterior pituitary. The source is anterior pituitary, and the hormone, the first hormone that is secreted by the anterior pituitary is the growth hormone. So growth hormone basically promotes the growth of the complete body, right? If there is deficiency, it leads to dwarfism. If there is excess of this hormone, it leads to gigantism, or it leads to acromegaly, right? Now the second hormone secreted by pituitary, anterior pituitary, is trophic hormone. So this trophic hormone has their secretions, has its secretions. The first is TSH, that is thyroid stimulating hormone, which stimulates the thyroid gland to secrete the hormone thyroxine. Then ACTH, that is adenocorticotropic hormone, right, which stimulates the adrenal glands. Then gonadotrophin hormone, which stimulates the glands, the testes and the ovaries. It has its secretions. FSH, that is follicular stimulating hormone, so it will stimulate the follicles In males they will produce sperms, and in females they will produce eggs. The next is luteinizing hormone. So this hormone basically is present in the females, and in females it leads to the production of progesterone hormone from corpus luteum. The next one is prolactin. So prolactin is a hormone which stimulates the milk production in females after the birth of a child. The next one is the posterior pituitary. So there are two hormones, ADH and oxytocin, right? So ADH and oxytocin. So ADH, antidiuretic hormone, it leads to the reabsorption of water in the kidney tubule. So whenever food, the blood goes into the kidney tubule, so the excess of the water and that is needed by our body is reabsorbed, right? It is absorbed back. Okay. And the second one is oxytocin. So whenever there is uterine contraction, so at that time the hormone called oxytocin comes into the picture, and it will lead to the contraction of the uterus so much that baby is delivered, baby comes out of the womb of a mother. So let us now talk about the control of hormonal secretions. So there are two types of control, right? So there is negative feedback system and there is positive one. So for say if there is too much of something in our body, right? So what will be the effect? What will be the effect in our body? So our body sends a signal that see, if you eat too much, so your brain will ultimately send you a signal that don't eat too much, just slow down. Now there is enough food in your stomach, right? So enough food in your body, that will give you a lot of energy. If it is too little, then you will urge to eat more. So eat more, have more, so that you can have more energy. So while talking about the control of hormonal secretions, so best negative control that we can talk about is the negative feedback mechanism with the reference to TSH level in blood. So there is hypothalamus in our brain. So this hypothalamus release the thyroid releasing hormone, which is called as TRH. It stimulates the anterior pituitary. Now from hypothalamus, when this TRH is secreted, it will stimulate the anterior pituitary to secrete TSH, that is thyroid stimulating hormone. This thyroid stimulating hormone from anterior pituitary will stimulate in turn the thyroid gland. Now the thyroid gland will produce the hormone called thyroxine, right? And we know the functions, we know the role of thyroxine in our body. It is very important, and it is that this thyroxine hormone is very important for our body. Now when the thyroxine level it exceeds to more than a certain limit, right? When it is more than the normal level in our body, it inhibits the secretion of TRH. So when the level is more, level of thyroxine hormone exceeds the normal level, so it will go back and give this signal to the hypothalamus to stop secreting the thyroid releasing hormone, and also it will inhibit the secretion of TSH from the anterior pituitary gland, right? So it will inhibit the secretion of TRH by hypothalamus and the secretion of TSH by the anterior pituitary gland. So this is very important, that all the hormones or all the glands or the organs in our body should coordinate with each other. If they will not coordinate with each other, so once the thyroid releasing hormone will be released from the hypothalamus, it will tell the pituitary to release TSH will be released, it will tell thyroid gland to secrete thyroxine hormone, and it will go on. So there will be lot of thyroxine in our body, so the over secretion of thyroxine is also not good in our body. So all the organs, so once any level increase above the normal one, or the level of a hormone comes down from the normal one, so the signal is sent to the respective gland to secrete more hormone, or to stop secreting or to inhibit the secretion of that hormone. So that is very important. So this particular system is called as a negative feedback mechanism. Now the control of hormonal secretions. We spoke about the negative feedback mechanism. Now this is the positive feedback mechanism. So the example for this positive feedback mechanism is the uterine contraction during childbirth. So in this particular case, the normal state of uterus is uncontracted. So if you see the state of the uterus, the normal state is uncontracted, but once the contraction starts, the uterus is not allowed to come back to the normal state till the baby is delivered. So the uterus is allowed, the message is given to the uterus to continue the contraction, and finally what will happen? Finally there will be delivery of the baby, right? So this is an example of positive feedback mechanism. So let us now talk about some of the questions. So the first question is given alongside is a portion of human body showing some important structure in the ventral or the front view. So what is this, where is this portion located in the body? So this is, they are showing you the thyroid gland, which is present in the neck region, right? So where is this? In the neck region. The second is name the structure numbered 1, 2 and 3, right? So 1, so what is this? So this is larynx, right? Okay, so what is this structure, this butterfly shaped structure? So the second is, the 2 is the thyroid gland. Now this structure, so this is called as the windpipe. Windpipe is what? Windpipe is called as, over here 3 is trachea. Now C part. State one main function of each of the structures named above. So one main function of the this first is larynx. So larynx is a voice box. So basically sound box or the voice box. It is a region from voice is generated. So while I am speaking, so the voice is getting generated from the larynx, right? The next one is the thyroid. So thyroid is a gland which secretes a hormone thyroxine. The next one is trachea. So trachea is also called as a windpipe, and it is a passage of air. This is a passage of air into our lungs. So air travels through from nostrils into this trachea, and from trachea into the lungs. The next is there any duct to carry the secretion from the structure number 2? If so, give its name, right? So is there any duct for the thyroid gland, from where the thyroid gland gives its secretion, that is the thyroxine gland, and send it to the target organ? So no, there is no duct, because this is an endocrine gland which is called as ductless gland, right? So I hope this is clear. Next question is given below is the outline diagram of human body showing position of certain organs. So 1, 2, 3 and 4. So name the parts numbered 1, 2, 3 and 4, right? So this is 4 and this is 3. So 3 is what? So this structure is the pancreas, right? 2, above the kidneys are adrenal glands, right? Over here, what is present over here? So this is the thyroid. In the neck region is the thyroid gland, and this pea-sized structure is called as pituitary, right? So this is the pituitary gland. Okay, so I hope this is clear. So what is common to all these parts in regard to the nature of these organs, right? So all of them are the endocrine glands, which are the ductless glands which release their secretions into the blood, and through blood these secretions reach the target organs. The next is name the nutrient element which is essential for the normal functioning of part 2. So that is the thyroid gland. So what is which nutrient is needed? So that is iodine. Iodine की कमी से किसी को भी घेंगा हो सकता है. So that is the swollen neck disease called goiter. Okay, so I hope this question is also clear. So I hope all the topics, all the questions that we discussed today are clear. So now we will meet in our next video. Until that, as you know, Learno Hub free है पर best है.